Today's consideration is entitled The Excuses of Moses. The text is found in Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 10, and Exodus chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. In this sermon, we look at Moses' excuses and God's response to them. As God's people today, we, like Moses, have received from God a special calling. We are called not to deliver people from physical bondage, but to preach Christ's message of deliverance, the world in bondage to sin. We are called to go into the world and preach the good news of salvation. So often, though, we behave just like Moses, making excuses. The first excuse of Moses is found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. Remember that Moses was once a member of the ruling house of Egypt, but now he was a humble shepherd. It had been 40 years since he had been in Egypt. He was 80 years old, already past the average lifespan for his generation. For these reasons, Moses wondered whether he was the right man for the job. But God's response was quick to Moses. I will certainly be with you. Exodus chapter 3, verse 12. God promised to be with Moses, and this done alone should have been enough. Some of us may insist that we are insufficient for the task. It is true that by ourselves we are insufficient, but God can make us sufficient. Look what He did with apostles, those 12 unlearned, untrained men. Our excuses for not doing what the Lord has called us to do are lame and may merely indicate a lack of faith. Yet, we come up with excuse after excuse. The second excuse of Moses is found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 13. When Moses said, "What shall I say?" Moses knew that if he went to the children of Israel, they were bound to ask questions such as, "Who is this God who sent you to us?" God told Moses that we should say in response to the Israelites' question. Again, we sometimes use the same excuse today. We may try to excuse ourselves by saying that our knowledge is inadequate. But God has told us what to say. It is really quite simple. Suppose they will not believe in me. This was the third response of Moses. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 1, Moses suggested that the people might not listen to him. He had already forgotten that God would be with him. God responded by equipping him with several convincing proofs to demonstrate to the rebellious Israelites. First, Moses' staff, which turned into a serpent. Second, his hand, which turned a leprous. The fear of failure keeps us from trying. But just as God gave Moses convincing evidence, so He has given to us the evidences necessary to convince the honest and sincere person. The Word of God, especially its evidence concerning the resurrection of Christ and the fulfilled prophecy, is able to produce faith. The fourth excuse of Moses: I am slow in speech and slow of tongue. Moses claimed that he was not an eloquent speaker, but God was not moved by this objection. God has arranged a mouthpiece for Moses, his brother Aaron. Aaron was sent earlier so as to arrive at the right time. Some Christians also try to use this excuse. They lament that they cannot speak well or are too timid to speak in public. But fear did not stop the Apostle Paul, and it has been stopped others. We have considered 4 excuses that Moses gave, but as we can see, they are not really valid. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 13, we learn the true lesson that Moses kept making excuses. Number 5. The 5 excuses of Moses. The 5th. Please send someone else. Moses simply did not want to go. His previous excuses were simply an attempt to hide the fact that he did not want to accept the challenge. Now that the facade is removed, God, impatient with Moses, becomes evident. The anger is kindled against Moses. We may find similar parallels in our lives. Usually, the excuses we dream up are just that. Excuses, not valid reasons. We would rather God send us someone else. We really don't want to go or to do what God has told us. With Moses, we know the rest of the story. He answered the call and went to Egypt. In humility, he trusted God and accepted the challenge that he had given to him. What about us? What will be the rest of our story? We will listen to the call and to obey the gospel of Christ. Only time will tell, but if you know what he would do, follow Moses' example and respond to God's loving call. This is my prayer.